How's it going, everybody?
It's Ben from Ben and Bev.
Welcome back to Spooky Season, Episode 5.
No one gets out alive.
No One Gets Out Alive is a 2021 horror film currently available on Netflix. It was released, I think,
About a week ago?
part of their rollout for the October Halloween season. The movie itself is based off of a story by Adam Nevill, award-winning author over in the UK. He also wrote the book that movie The Ritual was based off of, which I've also covered on this channel.
A survival film that takes place in the Swedish woods. I really enjoyed it. You should definitely check out that review.
Up there in the corner.
The film was directed by Santiago Menghini, who I'm completely unfamiliar with.
And features a bunch of actors I am also unfamiliar with.
This film centers around Amber, a Mexican immigrant who is moving to America to try and get a fresh start after staying with her mother as she was dying from cancer. She put her whole life on hold for what seems to be about 8 years. I don't remember the exact amount, but you start learning more details about her experience with her mother and that turmoil throughout this movie. As you learn more about her as a character, you also learn about her relative Beta. She's trying to get a job through, and her whole goal is to get this ID. And to me, this movie has a really driving plot of her trying to get an ID and get a solid start. It's actually similar to the layout of the movie Scarface, as you're just trying to see this person succeed upon reaching the United States after going through a bunch of turmoil to get here, which I can see leading to a really effective horror movie going forward, especially as this movie really adapts a mirror mask tone as her life just gets more and more unfortunate, and each turn she takes to try and move farther ahead, the shortcut, the narrow path, or the alternate route doesn't really get her anywhere.
She has no identification, and the job that her uncle can give her requires it to move forward.
The movie starts to join her as her life takes a turn for the worse, and she loses the hotel she's lodging at, and as well as gets close to losing her job, as well as friends and the people around her. She's forced to stay in this group home where only females are allowed to stay, and there's a weird man with private rooms and locked doors. It's one that you get a little bit of backstory on earlier in the movie at the very beginning of the film through some film slides about an explorer and how he went to Mexico, and there's a bunch of
Weird temples that he took stuff from, and he came home, and then there's a different situation where it showed a migrant woman who was there when the house hadn't been refurbished yet, passing away as well through mysterious circumstances. I'm not sure if it was ghosts or whatever.
really weird setup to the movie. Honestly, it was very clunky and delivered just like two choppy extra scenes they didn't know what to do with, so they're like, hey, this will go at the beginning to kind of explain things. As you dive into this movie with a very surreal, dark story, expect to be taken away by it. Once you're brought to these two brothers that own the place and their weird violence and call to this mysterious box that their father once brought home, you're not really sure how to handle the movie because it begins to take a really violent and abusive approach. It just becomes a home entrapment film, and it's just about her escaping, even though she has to keep coming back because it's the only place she can stay or escape to anyway. Getting a point where she's on the run, having escaped from the place, eating on her own at a diner, gets a cop called upon her because she falls asleep in the booth, and because of her legal status, she realizes she can't stay there. She has to call one of the brothers for help. Have a really smart protagonist and even smarter antagonist. Overall, a really interesting story and layout for this film, but despite all of its cruelty, violence, and an absolutely surreal cosmic horror sci-fi ending, for some reason it just doesn't deliver. It still feels B-movie in nature, and when I say the performances are solid, I mean it. The two brothers are very well done. I just feel like they didn't flush out the box, what it is, the brothers' background, why they behave the way they do, why are they trapping women here. They don't go into any of that extensively, and to me that really makes this movie lose its luster, despite having a really great lead actress in Amber, some really interesting sequences in the latter half of the film. It doesn't really make up for the lack of detail. And I'm honestly not sure what it is, because everything about this movie is an aspect I enjoy, but it just feels like it's not delivered with enough weight or immensity. Just missing a little bit from the potential it could be with such a beautiful idea and such a crazy finale.
Crazy performances, a beautiful soundtrack, and legitimate sense of dread, terror, and a drive and goals.
Establish a lot of great stuff in that first act that just seems to go nowhere. Establish ghosts at one point, and I almost forgot to talk about them because when they do establish them, it's actually this really interesting thing.
Where Amber sees them, she looks at them, she interacts with them.
They don't go into that. They don't explain why she can see them. She doesn't explain why she's interacting with them, why she's not scared. I don't know. They're trying to do a lot of things, and I feel like there's a lot of this movie that's cut out that we didn't get to see. I feel like this movie's probably an hour longer or something somewhere on the cutting room floor, and I would absolutely love to see that version of the film, as the idea is really solid and the driving plot is one that you can get really invested in. It's a really solid watch, and you should probably check it out. Despite all the negatives, though, I did find the film interesting overall. As everything I previously mentioned, there's a great idea here. It's just they couldn't find quite right what to do with it. Something that happens from time to time when you do book adaptations. You can't quite get all the ideas from the book into the movie in the same way. Some things don't translate great, and sometimes can't do it because of budget restrictions. My rating for No One Gets Out Alive is a 6.8 out of 10. The movie isn't great, but it is pretty good, and it has a lot of interesting things there that keep you entertained. There's a lot of shocking elements to it. It has a genuinely intriguing story. It just didn't really deliver on that ending, and when you do get that interesting twist at the end, it didn't really feel deserved. Really weird connection I noticed between this movie, the movie Malevolent, which was the second episode of Spooky Season, as well as the last movie I reviewed, In the Earth. They all have very similar elements elements to them despite being very different movies. They all have a female
or co-lead on In the Earth
protagonist, carries the story forward. You get a lot of backstory for those characters as you go into it.
All of them have different issues within their plotting.
They all have very interesting twists that you're not expecting, including violence being a theme of all of them. You get
a very serial killer, extreme violent tone at the end of the movie Malevolent after the setup being something like a Conjuring film.
Within the Earth, you have this very sci-fi story with some extreme, absolutely sadistic horror violence in the middle. And with this movie, you have this interesting narrative about immigration with extreme violence in the middle and a crazy sci-fi trippy ending, very similar to In the Earth.
They're three very similar but very different films.
With 2 on Netflix and 1 on Hulu.
But if you had to watch one,
honestly really hard for me to say. If you're more into sci-fi and weird movies, In the Earth is definitely the way to go. If you're more into the haunted house side of things, I would definitely say go more towards Malevolent. No One Gets Out Alive is solid, but
if one of them you skip, I guess it can be that one, though I will say the crazy
sci-fi nonsense at the end makes that whole movie absolutely worth watching just because some of the CGI is absolutely impeccable.
Random twist, too. Doesn't really make any sense or feel earned, but I mean, hey, it's fine.
You still catch No One Gets Out Alive on Netflix, and I think it'll be on there for a while, because I believe it's also a Netflix original. What did you guys think about No One Gets Out Alive? B-movie violence with an undeserved sci-fi twist, or utter brilliance? Let us know in the comments below. We'll see you guys next time. Ben and Bev, out.